shouting his name, honouring his life. Thousands line the route through Louisville as Muhammad Ali is laid to rest. The city's never seen anything like it. Sporting greats, Hollywood stars and political leaders gather to remember the greatest. Good evening. The stories they tell tonight are bound to be amazing, recalling his leadership, defiance, wit and sporting brilliance. A glittering crowd of famous names are crammed in with ordinary citizens of the world as they remember an astonishing life. We talked to the longtime friend who conceived this famous image of Ali the martyr. Stripped of his title in the midst of a legal fight, he did eventually win.
Here in Louisville, Muhammad Ali's hometown, his friends and family have just buried in a private ceremony the man who's known here simply as the champ. Now they're beginning to gather for a public commemoration of his extraordinary life.
Also tonight, this programme understands there's a secret plan to keep Tata's steel plant open. But unions are far from celebrating as it dawns on them what impact that plan could have on the workforce. And curtain up tonight on Euro 2016 as the football festival begins in France with its stay well behaved. It is the send-off which he planned with his family in meticulous detail. Tens of thousands of people have turned out to honour the boxing legend Muhammad Ali as his body was carried through the streets of his hometown of Louisville. Among the pallbearers, the actor Will Smith and fellow boxer Lennox Lewis, while former President Bill Clinton will deliver a eulogy at the Multi-Faith Memorial. Our Washington correspondent, Kylie Morris, is outside the stadium where that service is taking place.
Thank you, Christian. It has already been an extraordinary day, but there is much still to come here. We've seen an amazing procession through the streets of the town, and then a private ceremony, of course, just for friends and family. And now the planned public commemoration, running slightly late, but all those luminaries, Bill Clinton, the Turkish president, the King of Jordan, all here to mark this extraordinary man. But of course, for people from Louisville, he was one of your own, wasn't he? I'm joined here now by Jalen Posey, who say he's the greatest. Jalen, I know you're a young activist. Tell me what it is in your activism that is inspired by Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali is from the city of Louisville, so to have someone like him who shook up the world and started a revolutionary fire in my city, I feel proud to say I'm from Louisville. You know, Louisville's not a perfect city, but I feel like me, along with other youth in the city, can make not only, you know, Louisville a better place, but the whole world a better place.
I was really struck by the fact that so he told these stories about coming back to Louisville after the Olympics in 1960, a place where he couldn't even be served in restaurants. But here we are today, and he has brought the entire city to a standstill. So there was something about the way that he stood and fought for the causes that he cared about that made people love him.
Well, he was very charismatic, and you know, around the time that Ali was coming up in West Louisville, you know, West Louisville has a long legacy of being segregated. You know, even still that legacy's continued. Louisville is the fourth most segregated city in, you know, the U.S. But, you know, this event with Ali, I feel like it's bringing people together in a positive light, you know, even though there are some negative protesters here.
Do you think if a young boxer came up today who was outspoken, stood up for his blackness, and was a Muslim American, do you think America has changed to the point where he would be embraced and celebrated?
It depends, because you can speak out all you want, but you have to do it continuously. So you can have one stunt, and America may or may not support you, but if you do it continuously, honestly, I don't know. I would support the person.
Okay. You talked about his charisma. I mean, the amazing thing to me is that he's an old man,
right,
and you're still a teenager. I understand that you're going to his old high school after the summer.
Central High School.
So how is it that he speaks to young people still?
Well, when school starts back up, I'll be in the 11th grade at Central High School, and last school year, that was my first time seeing him. It's when he received the Grawemeyer Medal Award with the University of Louisville at Louisville Palace. And seeing him, you know, kind of humbled me, because you can obviously tell he was suffering from the Parkinson's, but you could tell still that he was still, that there was still fire in him to, you know, do the right thing and to continue what he had started a long time ago.
Okay, Jalen, thank you very much for joining us. Now we'll come back to Louisville shortly with more on today's commemorations, but for now it's back to you in London.
Thanks, Kylie. And later we'll also be talking to one of Ali's longtime friends who created this iconic image of the boxer. Now, strikes, a state of emergency and unprecedented security on the streets across France as the Euro 2016 tournament kicks off tonight. England will be playing their debut match against Russia tomorrow in Marseille. This afternoon, there were fresh clashes between rival fans, and riot police moved in to keep them apart, firing tear gas as fans hurled bottles at them. Well, our sports correspondent, Kamian Zerum, is in Marseille. Kami.
Good evening, Christian. As you say, in Marseille, and I'm afraid to say the situation is a little tense. We are down at the port where, for most of the afternoon now, there have been, or at least there's been the threat of returns to scuffles that we first saw last night. Over my shoulder there, very large groups of England fans having a sing-song, but it hasn't been like that all day. Late this afternoon, there were more problems as a number of England fans were arrested. They were taken away in handcuffs. Intelligence, or at least police who were spotters, used to pick out people from the crowds and take them away. Now, behind me, we'll just take a little turn. Police lines have been across this main road to try and stop fans from continuing to fight, not only with the police, where they were throwing beer cans and bottles, but also every now and then chasing other fans. Also, not far from here in the centre of town, reports of scuffles between groups of local youths and also Russian fans, because as you said, Russia play England in the opening England game here in Marseille tomorrow. It is a worrying prospect, and as we know, policing for this event is a very, very high priority given what happened in Paris last year. Let us take a look at what's been happening today.
This is not what France needs. More violence in Marseille, where England play Russia tomorrow, and reports spreading of more trouble between rival fans and local youths, like there was last night. Scuffles broke out outside this Irish pub, over quickly and isolated, more round the corner, but who knows how significant, because police resorting to tear gas is never a good sign.
What I see was a load of French fans turn up over the road here, and they started throwing objects at us. Now, what they were was just because it was dark as well, and we're all intoxicated. And next to it, things were blowing up in our faces, firecrackers. Yeah, and it was quite frightening in a way.
Are you worried about it happening again?
Not particularly, no. If you're worried, you stay away, don't you? So it is what it is, isn't it?
Either way, it brings back memories of the bad old days. The 1998 World Cup, when riots here in Marseille left dozens of England fans injured, dozens more arrested. And soft-touch policing at this tournament? Forget it.
And unfortunately in Marseille, they're still policing it in exactly the same way as they policed it in 1998, when there was very serious disorder over 2 days here.
What do you think the prognosis is for tonight?
Unless the French police are going to change the way they police, I think the likelihood is it's going to escalate in terms of levels of disorder rather than die down.
You're worried?
Yes.
The problem is people are twitchy for another reason, and we all know why. Abandoned luggage could mean something very bad. France is under a state of emergency, but last night tens of thousands danced the night away at the opening concert in Paris. Right now, nearly 100,000 more are flocking to the Stade de France for the opening game. Yards away, this anonymous side street. Many fans will be oblivious to the secrets it holds, but not Atsa Pavlovich. Last November, he nearly died when shrapnel from suicide bombs strafed this lamppost and his flesh. But Atsa will be back tonight, selling scarves to raise money for survivors like him.
It is a stadium. The game goes on, and so does life. People need to celebrate and go and see the games. And that makes me happy. I'm happy to come on Friday and hope everything will be fine.
It is a challenge both off and on the pitch.
My message to the fans is very simple, you know. We really appreciate your support. The support of the England fans has been fantastic over the years, and in particular during my time as national team manager, the support's been quite incredible, both home and away. We hope they're going to come and support us just like they always do, and we hope they're going to enjoy the tournament, enjoy watching us play, and that they're going to be able to avoid any troubles that might be lurking around the corner.
Into this cauldron of hopes and dreams, fans from 24 European countries are pouring. But it is France, no doubt, with the most at stake.
Well, back to our main news and the funeral procession and memorial for the boxing champion Muhammad Ali in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. Here's how Kylie Morris saw the day.
Champs back home! Champs back home!
While the world mourns a global hero, for Louisville, the loss of Muhammad Ali is personal. Thousands lined the city's streets to honour their hometown son, who so many of them knew as a boy, back when he was just Cassius Clay.
My great-great-grandfather was a Kentucky slave, and he was named after some great Kentuckian. Well, Cassius Marcellus Clay is a great name in Kentucky.
Then in his transformation to Muhammad Ali, proud Muslim American, three-time world champion, Olympic gold medalist, humanitarian and activist. Ali, 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 Ali. The biggest crowds gathered at the start of the journey outside the funeral home. His casket emerged, lifted into the hearse by pallbearers including Will Smith and the boxers Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis. His family and friends waving from the windows of the cortege as it began its 19-mile journey through the city streets.
He's a legend. Yeah, he was a legend living, and he's a legend going out.
Some had skipped work for the morning, which you can only imagine he'd approve, but there was nowhere else to be. To sum him up in one word:
the greatest.
Love.
Confidence.
Wisdom. Awesome. Inspiration, motivation, legacy, legendary. He's the greatest.
At the mosque in Louisville, the remembering began last night after evening prayers, quietly and with tears.
That he made it okay for us to be Muslim, you know, here in America. He makes me proud. You know, he does. He makes me proud.
Sometimes people ask me, what country are you from? And when did you come to the United States? And how do you speak English so well? And I find that to be a little confusing. And I say, well, you know who Muhammad Ali is, right? And they say, yeah, you know he's American Muslim, right? And they say, yeah, okay. I'm American Muslim like him.
On the corner, there was time to practice the Ali shuffle, even throw a punch, while fans of all ages waited for the champ. But it was the challenge Muhammad Ali threw the system that one man reflected on.
When he made his political statement about the Vietnam War.
The statement said that Clay would have been untrue to his religion if he'd accepted the draft.
And I am a Vietnam veteran, and I was very proud of the fact that he stood up and resisted the draft and did that at his peril.
If Ali was brave outside the ring, in it, he was Quicksilver. An inspiration to other fighters who he befriended.
Me coming out of the ring and him saying to me, hey, you're pretty good, and you won that fight. You know, that's great. That was perfect for me at that point, for my hero to say that to me, because that really, you know, made me go on.
He will never die. And the spirit of Muhammad Ali lives on because he was out to try to help and bring people together rather than divide them.
Finally, on the corner of 9th and West Jefferson, after hours in the Kentucky heat, the hearse carrying Ali's body swept into view. And just as suddenly, he was gone. The procession moving on to other streets, other neighborhoods, where they reached out to touch and dance to escort the man who always said he was the greatest. And certainly today, he was.
Now, this programme understands that bosses at Tata are working on secret plans to keep the steel plant at Port Talbot open. But unions aren't celebrating. Far from it, in fact. It's thought the new deal involves slashing a possible £100 million through job cuts and reduced benefits. Our business correspondent, Helia Ebrahimi, is here with more. So what's happening?
Well, I understand that Tata is looking at a plan that, as you said, would keep Port Talbot, but with a total of £200 million of cuts a year. Now, £100 million of that would come from controversial areas like job cuts and benefits reductions, with the rest coming from policy changes that would mean cheaper electricity or tax breaks. Now, we already have a radical consultation about changes to pensions in the works that unions have agreed to.
So some heated meetings going on.
I mean, I think it's this latest push from Tata that's really incensed people. There's been some heated exchanges. Last week, we had a town hall meeting where Tata boss Bhamindra Jha was actually told staff at the plant that they should be grateful that Tata is even considering staying. Understandably, some of them just walked out of this meeting. Then on Wednesday, you had a Steel Council meeting with the business secretary, and again you had heated discussions between union bosses and Mr. Jha.
So what's the staff most outraged about?
Look, I think from the union's perspective, they've spent 3 months with their jobs on the line. What they want is a new buyer. They're hopeful of that with a long-term plan. If it's Tata, that's fine, but what's their investment plan? And certainly one union boss said to me very candidly, we will refuse to engage in discussions about benefit cuts. Just listen, from Tata's perspective, on the record, they are saying that they are still committed to running a thorough and urgent sale process.
Helia, thank you. Now, the former Labour leader, Ed Miliband, who's campaigning to remain in the European Union, has admitted the result is in question. And in the last half hour, another opinion poll has put the Leave campaign 10 points ahead. As this programme showed last night, many Labour supporters don't realise the party's official position is to remain, and many of them actually want to leave. Our political correspondent, Michael Crick, reports.
Labour volunteers in Boris Johnson masks today. Rather odd when Labour says their pro-Remain message has been left in the twilight zone by Tory rivalries. So even ahead of tonight's 10% poll lead, former leader Ed Miliband tried to alert party voters Labour is for Britain staying.
Are you worried you're going to lose this vote? I think it's in question, that's what I would say. Because, look, most people haven't voted yet. And, you know, I think after the general election, I got out of the forecasting business. So, you know, look, we'll see.
But what's gone wrong for you here? I mean, has there been a slowness, a complacency? I mean, people are already voting by post, probably about 10% actually.
Correct. But you know what?
You have been slow.
No, you know what I think is one of the big issues here, which is that people are unhappy with the direction of the country under David Cameron. And so the danger of this referendum is it looks like, is it a vote on the status quo, whether you like the government?
And that was borne out in part by the hostile reception David Cameron got from a live audience on the BuzzFeed website tonight.
So I'm voting Remain, but nothing to do with you guys. I hate the Tories. I'm just going to say you've everything up in this country. You've screwed students, you've screwed the disabled, the vulnerable. I mean, seriously, like you want to. I've heard that you want to take back the Human Rights Act and everything as well. And I could totally believe that. I wouldn't put that past you at all, Dodgy Dave.
Well, Yasmin, I don't want to put you off. Look, you and I can have that's the great thing about this debate.
Labour's Andy Burnham, out today in Hull, is even more worried about defeat, despite Labour's constant stress to core voters that they might lose EU workers' rights. If workers' rights really are threatened, say the Leave camp, how come Labour MP Dennis Skinner, a left-winger, and his colleague John Mann both joined them today?
The biggest threat to workers, particularly on low incomes, is a twofold threat. The first is they have seen their incomes drop because of unrestricted migration. That's a fact from the Bank of England. The second thing is many of them have lost their jobs as a result of uncontrolled migration. As I said before, unless we control migration, you'll find people will not have jobs, and if they don't have jobs, they don't have any rights.
Meanwhile, Labour also launched this poster today saying right-wing Brexit leaders would gamble our future. Yet surely it's more of the very personality politics Labour say has been obscuring their message to Remain.
Now, Syrian jets have resumed their bombardment of Diriyah near the capital Damascus, just hours after the first food aid reached the area in almost 4 years. Local activists say around 20 bombs have already been dropped on the rebel-held suburb, which has seen some of the heaviest attacks since the beginning of the war. Last night, there was a pause in the bombing to allow food aid to be brought in by the Syrian Red Crescent and the UN. Trucks delivered enough supplies to feed 2,400 people for a month, just over half Diriyah's population. The Queen was cheered by crowds as she arrived at St Paul's Cathedral to celebrate her 90th birthday in a national ceremony of thanksgiving. Britain's longest-serving monarch was joined by 2,000 people, including her family and senior politicians. Parties have been organised across the country this weekend. Well, more now on our main news, the funeral and memorial service for Muhammad Ali. Huge crowds have gathered to pay their respects in his Kentucky hometown. One of his longtime friends is George Lois, a leading designer and an influential figure in American advertising. They worked together on civil rights campaigns, and George Lois was the creative force behind one of the most iconic images of the 60s, the Esquire magazine cover called The Passion of Muhammad Ali. In 1967, Ali refused to join the army because he was a conscientious objector, but his decision was widely condemned. He was even labelled a traitor by some and was stripped of his world heavyweight boxing title and banned from competing. The image depicted Ali as Saint Sebastian and brings together the issues of the day, the Vietnam War, race and religion. And George Lois joins me now from New York. Tell me, how did you achieve this image?
You have to understand, at the time, Muhammad was in big trouble. You know, he not only when he became a Muslim, not only did he changed, he got rid of his slave name, and he infuriated millions of Americans, believe it or not, just by the name, change of his name. Then he got into really a ton of trouble when he refused to step forward and join the army. And rightfully so. He thought it was a bad war, but he also did it for religious. He had religious objections, we were good friends. I knew him when he was 18 years old, so I called him up and I said, Muhammad, you're running around, you're talking to the colleges in the country. And by the way, he was wowing the college crowds. They loved him. And what was really happening is they were getting him, they were getting the young people who were draft years. He became the symbol of the anti-war movement. So I told Muhammad to show up in New York. And we were going to take a photograph. I'm going to have a photograph taken of Saint Sebastian. And I explained a little bit about Saint Sebastian, and he showed up, and everything was fine. He comes into the studio beautifully dressed in his trunks and his white, beautiful white shoes. And I showed him a photograph of a Botticini Saint Sebastian painting, and I said, I want you to pose like this: plant your feet, very strong body, but your head is in torment. And he said, and he's looking at the postcard, the photograph, and he said, "Hey, George, this cat's a Christian." I said, "Yeah, Muhammad, Saint Sebastian." And then, of course, he said, George, I can't. I'm a Muslim, and I can't do that. So I go, what are we going to do? I said, can you call Elijah Muhammad? He said, yeah.
The leader of the Nation of Islam.
On the phone. The leader, yeah. I mean, he was like a god, you know. And he gets him on the phone, and he mumbles a little bit to him, and then he hands me the phone. He said, talk to him, and I spoke to Elijah Muhammad for 3 or 4 minutes, and we talked about mythology, about your martyrdom, about religion, am I religious, this and this and this. And finally he said, it sounds like a very good image, very smart man, and and we went ahead and we photographed him. And we're photographing him, and we had arrows that tipped it, that looked like it was blood, and we hung them in wires because it was before workshop, and so it would be easy to photograph it and just retouch the engravings. And while he's posing, he says, "Hey, George." And I said, "What, Muhammad?" I was 20 feet away. He said, "Hey, George." I said, "What?" He said, he took his hand out from behind his body and pointed to each of the arrows, and he said very loudly, "Lyndon Johnson, General Westmoreland, Robert McNamara, Clark Clifford, Dean Rusk, Hubert Humphrey." He pointed out the 6 tormentors in the government that were trying to put him in jail. But you understand that he was awaiting the Supreme Court to come to decide his case, and he would have gone to jail for 5 years. He lost the right to fight, et cetera, et cetera. And when the cover came out, I got to tell you what happened. I'm telling you, America went nuts. It exploded in America. I mean, I run into people who were in colleges back then that said it changed their lives. He became the actual dynamic symbol of a strong, young, brash, intelligent, spiritual.
And do you think he knew what that image represented?
Excuse me?
Do you think he knew what that image represented when he was doing it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he didn't get it when I first... No, he did get it. He understood full well that I was saying that he was a martyr to his race, to his religion, and a martyr in refusing to fight in a bad war, in a really terrible war. Actually, I believe a war of genocide against the Vietnamese people.
Well, George Lewis, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry to cut you off. It's an amazing story. I could hear much more of it, but maybe another time. Thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight.
Sure thing.
Well, Kylie Morris is outside the memorial service in Louisville. Let's go back to her. Kylie.
Yes, Christian, we're hearing, I've got to say, lots of stories of different versions of Muhammad Ali, of the Muhammad Ali who paid someone's tuition fee so they could finish college, of the Muhammad Ali who went out with someone's cousin and drove her around in a pink Cadillac. But we're also hearing about him as a role model, and I think it's important that we speak to Elaine Simmons. Elaine, come on in. So Elaine is the chair of the TKO Boxing Club here in Louisville, so you spend a lot of time with young boxers.
Yes.
And what is the club telling them when they step into the ring about Muhammad Ali?
Usually we address them or talk to them about more so Ali's core principles. We want to instill respect in the young men and ladies that come to our gym. We want them to exude that respect when they're inside the gym and outside the gym with friends, family, coaches, everyone. And also confidence. It's definitely a big confidence builder to have a crew or a group around you of friends and mentors and coaches who continually want to encourage you to do your best and uplift you. So I'd say definitely part of Muhammad Ali's core principles, just to help build that confidence and to teach them respect, and then our sense of community.
I mean, he wasn't a conformist in any sense, was he? You know,
Not
he was
at
someone
all.
who challenged the system constantly from when he was a little boy.
He did.
So I suppose the challenge for you is to encourage these kids to replicate that as well, in the sense that be those kind of challenging, questioning individuals, but at the same time do it respectfully.
Absolutely. That is definitely, certainly a part of what we want to do, because within instilling confidence, we also want them to be themselves. We don't want you to be a replica of someone else. You are you, and that is so beautiful. So you have to let the real you shine through. And if that does come through in a way that's disrespectful, we're not trying to change the person you are. We just want to help you grow into the man or woman that you hope to become. Our coaches often say we want you to win in the ring, but more than that, we want you to win at life. And we want these things that we're trying to teach you, whether they be nutrition, exercise, respect, confidence, community. We want those things. We want you to carry them everywhere you go.
Elaine Simmons, thank you. It was a real pleasure meeting you and
Thank
speaking
you.
with you. Thanks very much. That's all from us from now, so thanks, and back to London.
And that's all from us too. We're back tomorrow at 6. Till then, bye-bye.